Hello, it's Wednesday morning. Of course, normally Tuesday morning with Laith Baruch, but there were other things going on. So we got a lot going on in the Middle East. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here with Laith Maroof. He's in Beirut working hard in a very dangerous area, doing some fine work. As you can see, freepalestine.video is his website. Make sure you go there, check out all their good stuff, follow them on all their social media platforms, and share that website with everyone. If you can afford it, please also donate. It's important that they keep this work up. And the only way they can do it, needless to say, they ain't getting money from the big boys, right? They're not getting Lockheed Martin money. They're not getting money from anyone. So they need us to donate. Also, whether you can or cannot afford to donate, share freepalestine.video on all your social media platforms and put a little note there to reminding people to donate. And also make sure you follow them. Let's start with this. Speaking of social media platforms, I understand you guys have been banned and unbanned and shadow banned and all kinds of weird things going on. Update us on that, Leigh.
Yeah, so in a span of 24 hours, our TikTok channel was nuked and with no cause given. And then the same thing happened to our YouTube channel, which had, 13,000 followers, 3 million views. Again, no cause given. And, we announced that on X, and lo and behold, the Jewish Defense League, which is a terrorist organization inside the Zionist colony in the US also, because of their assassination of an American congressman in the 80s, they claim to credit for this, that they were campaigning behind the scene for this. And a lot of people interacted with our post about the ban on YouTube, huge accounts. And then this morning we were back on YouTube, although one of the episodes of Wartime Cafe, our flagship show, where we interview personalities in Lebanon and around the world, was given a strike for quote unquote supporting terrorism and the terrorist organizations. The interview is available on Rumble and Odyssey and TikTok and X. People can watch it there. There's nothing wrong with the interview. It's just ridiculous, this accusation. But in any case, our channel is back. And we noticed once all this interaction happened with our X account that over the last since the beginning of November, we've had 0 new followers on X, although we were gaining thousands of, a month usually. And we noticed that we were losing more followers than people that are new followers. 0 new followers since the beginning of November, basically, a total. And suddenly, because of all this interaction with the comment on the ban of us on YouTube, we have gained since the morning almost 1,000 new followers.
Wow. Well, that just goes to show the level of shadow banning. And it also goes to show that there are a lot of people out here who are very interested in the work that you're doing and want to learn more. That people, as we see, CNN, MSNBC, those places are bleeding like an artery was cut, as far as viewers are concerned. And people want the alternative media. What it shows us? They have to actually put up walls and stop people from going from following you and trying to learn what you're doing and see your work, because that's what the viewers want to see. It. They want to follow you, and the system has to come up and block them from doing it. It's like it has to fight the people, because the people want the opportunity to get, I would say, the truth. We don't have to call it the truth. They want the perspective from ordinary people, not just the perspective from governments. And the governments have to block them from doing that, because otherwise all the people will go to regular old people like Laith Maroof.
Oh, yeah. And, the majority of our content is reporting from the field in the West Bank, in Lebanon. So it is news reporting and it's bringing the fact. It's not even commentaries. We have zero commentary shows in terms of you see me on your show, Garland, or other shows on the internet where I make commentary. But when you watch the content of Free Palestine TV, it is news content that is factual because the camera is on the ground. The interview, you're hearing the people that are being interviewed, not us. Even the flagship shows that are talk shows are interviews with individuals. It's not me making commentary. I'm interviewing somebody. So it's ridiculous that they would target a news outlet, a primary source of news. This is the worst kind of censorship. And I look at our content that we are producing, and it's unique because of that. There's nothing else that is bringing English news content from the ground in Lebanon to the world. There's very little that is doing coverage of what's happening in the West Bank. The stories that we are airing are unique in both cases, and the attempt to silence them and the amount of interaction with those videos shows you how important they are for knowledge on those issues.
So, well, let's get to what's happening. All right, let's start here. Before we even get into politically and internationally, um, kinetically, everything I read, I read that the Ansar Allah, they've hit apparently the Israelis with another missile. That now I'm looking at the videos that in Tel Aviv, there's fires, there's people running in all directions, there's explosions going off. It seems to me that Israel's getting battered right now. That I'll put it like this: what Israel seems to do is just, okay, we can blow up a bunch of buildings in a village and we can kill civilians, and we can bomb communities. Hezbollah seems to be, and let me change this: the axis of resistance seems to be mostly targeting military, but it seems to me kind of tit for tat. They're hitting Tel Aviv and they're hitting some areas in Israel. I mean, they've taken the gloves off, but it seems to me that things are not going very well for Israel militarily right now.
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean, even those attacks on Tel Aviv yesterday were on military and intelligence buildings in the heart of Tel Aviv, and so the precision in doing so, and the ability to cross all the air defenses of Israel is now clear. Hezbollah can hit any target, and they've been pounding those, including earlier in the week, they pounded the Ministry of Defense, the Kiryat, or like kind of the Pentagon in the Zionist colony, just in the suburbs of Tel Aviv. But those attacks in the center of Tel Aviv came after the Zionists, within 24 hours, attacked 3 locations inside Beirut proper. For almost 2 months now, they've been bombarding the southern suburb of Beirut that is known colloquially as the Dahiya, and all the other parts of Lebanon, but they haven't dared yet attack within Beirut proper. But because they did 3 attacks, one of them directed at an area called Mar Elias that is Christian. There's a big church for Saint Elias, or Elia, whatever you would call him in English, and the Palestinian refugee camp there. That's a tiny refugee camp that's full of Christian Palestinians. They hit a electronics store just on the side of the camp, and it has a lot of what do you call them, lithium batteries, because the whole city is dependent on solar and lithium batteries for their electricity because there's no services here. They also attacked the headquarters of the Ba'ath Party, the branch for Lebanon, in another area of Beirut, and they assassinated there the media director for Hezbollah, um, the martyr Muhammad Afif, who has been, taking all the media around the country, showing them the Zionist attacks and so on, and they wanted to silence him. And finally, they attacked 500 meters away from the Lebanese parliament. That's like, just a block away, less than a block away, and they hit the home and the office of the Mukhtar of the neighborhood. A Mukhtar in the Arabic culture is like a mayor, but for the neighborhood that is elected. And so they killed the Mukhtar and his son in this neighborhood just across from the parliament. And so this all was happening because the Zionists wanted to add a lot of pressure on the Lebanese government. You see, all of these were hits that are close to important government offices and ministries and so on. And even when we're talking about the assassination of the speaker for Hezbollah, their spokesperson, those were all threats at the Lebanese government as the quote-unquote American negotiator, who's an Israeli officer, Hochstein, was supposed to arrive to Beirut. So all of this was to threaten the Lebanese government, who were being asked to sign on a surrender. The peace, quote-unquote, deal that Hochstein was coming with stipulates that even after a ceasefire, Israel can violate the Lebanese airspace and bomb any place it wants to at any time. So it's a surrender. So Hezbollah responded with fire by attacking the heart of Tel Aviv, still targeting intelligence and military sites. And Hochstein arrived today and practically got the middle finger from the prime minister and the speaker of the House that told them their limit is the UN resolution 1701 that stipulates that no Israeli violations of Lebanese sovereignty and no Lebanese violations of Israeli sovereignty. And so he's going back right now with nothing in his hand. We'll see what he's going to get from Netanyahu.
Wow. What's happening on the border? As far as I understand, there's still there's heavy fighting on the Lebanese border, and that Israel's still once again there. They're taking heavy casualties, and they're not making any headway at all.
Yes. Yesterday, last night, in the middle of the night, they were trying to breach into Al Khiyam village, which is at the kind of tip of the Lebanese Palestine's panhandle, that jots out on the map up there. It's right at the corner of it. So this should be really an easy location to take. But the battle was so huge that you could hear it all across the valley. And the Israelis lost 4 Merkava tanks in the battle. This is above and beyond their other armored vehicles. So counting 4 tanks blown up becoming into ovens, you're talking about at least 12 Israeli soldiers dead there. And they had to withdraw. Similarly, earlier in the day, yesterday and the day before, they were attempting to bypass the frontline villages close to the sea coast in the Naqoura area because they haven't been able to penetrate them. So they went around these villages to try to reach a third line village that overlooks them up the hill, and this way to have firepower over the whole coastline and take it over. And they got for 3 days they tried, and for 3 days every night they lose 2-3 tanks, and they had to withdraw. So we're talking now 50 days of attempting to occupy anything in Lebanon. And now that they are going deeper into the territory, specifically in open fields, they're becoming easy targets for bombardment from Hezbollah's missiles and drones because there's no air defenses to cover them, right? And now there's the serious losses for the Israelis that they can't cover anymore.
Wow. Yeah. I understand that some other things are going on outside of Israel, that the U.S. bases are getting hit in Syria, Yemen. The Ansar Allah is still having success in firing drones and various missiles and projectiles into. Can you see me? Everything okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And that the Israelis are threatening to attack Iraq now.
Oh, yes. So this is part of their maximum pressure possibilities, they think, to force the axis of resistance into retreat. So same how they attacked all those civilian areas in Beirut yesterday to threaten the country into submission. They're now threatening the Iraqis for two reasons. Number one, Iraq right now is beyond the resistance activities, is responsible for a land bridge and an air bridge of supplies, in terms of medical aid and or oil and gas to the country, so it can stay surviving. And the Israelis have been attacking the gathering points for the aid convoys as they reach the Homs province and try to cross into Lebanon. And the American ambassador threatened to allow the Israelis to shoot down any Iraqi planes coming with aid if they don't stop in Jordan and be searched for before coming to Beirut airport. And similarly with Iran, the government of Lebanon said that they were threatened by the American ambassador if any Iranian aid arrives, threatened their own lives, basically, by the American ambassador. And so now Iran has to send everything to Iraq, and then everybody pretends it's Iraqi aid. Otherwise, it's not going to reach the country here. So add to it that the Iraqi resistance is now conducting up to 14, 15 operations a day, attacking Israeli sites, specifically in the Golan Heights. And yesterday, as you mentioned, they attacked American bases in Syria and in Iraq. And this comes after the U.S. brought in huge reinforcements and weapon caches into the largest American occupation base in Syria in the oil fields of Deir ez-Zor. So we see like how it seems like, as we saw over the last few weeks, Syria becoming increasingly a new battle zone and possibilities of a whole war on the Golan Heights. Iraq is going to probably be dragged into whatever regional war and it's going to be the Israelis that are going to force that.
Yeah. I think that's several of the things. Let me, a couple of the main things I want to hit, but I want to get your thoughts on this too, from your vantage point, how people see it, how you see it from Beirut. Okay, the Biden team got crushed for any number of reasons. Gaza was certainly one of them. I mean, a lot of their people stayed home. They were furious, right? This Gaza thing may have really just ended the Democratic Party. It's torn to shreds. So Trump's in, and Trump's team, whether they can or not, that's another story, have said, that Ukraine stuff has to end, right? Now, Trump has said, I'm ending all of the conflicts, whether he win or who knows, the God knows. Who only knows what's going to happen? We don't. Okay. So Biden recently, Trump saying, as soon as I get in, I'm talking to the Russians, I'm talking to Ukrainians, we got to end this thing. We could say, is it because they want to up the ante in Middle East or we don't know, but none of it do we know. Here's what we know. These lunatics said, great, now we can use ATACMS to attack Russia and, potentially provoke nuclear annihilation of the world and all that kind of stuff. The American people literally said, we don't like all of these wars. We got problems at home. screw you, Democrats, you're nuts. And your thoughts on Biden clearing the ATACMS missile, which I read they got like 50 ATACMS missiles. It ain't going to change nothing. The only thing it could do is provoke something really, really bad, which seems to be what the neocons want. But I don't think the Russians are stupid enough to really do. I mean, I think they'll respond, but I don't think they're going to like, okay, we got to nuke everybody before we have a chance to maybe work out a deal. Anyway, let me throw this whole disaster at you and you get your thoughts on it.
Oh, I mean, when I read that, my thought is that actually, the deep state that runs both Biden and Trump wants to make it look like, Biden is the one forcing it, and then Trump is like, hey, I got to continue this mess. It's also actually giving Trump more cards, even if he wants to negotiate.
I agree.
So Biden is actually doing Trump a favor, okay, if you think about it that way. And of course, the crazy Ukrainians, but not them really, the Americans that are, and European troops that are manning those ATCAMs just fired on one of the Russian provinces close to the border. I don't remember the name of the province. So
yeah, Bryansk, I think.
Yeah. So in the last hour, Russian nuclear bombers, Tupolovs, took off. There's up to now 9 or 10 of them up in the air. And American media outlets are saying some of the nuclear warheads that are on track basically are being moved right now out of their holding places. So whether President Putin is going to do this or not, he's definitely threatening it right now. And we saw him signing on to a new decree of a change of the position of the use of nuclear weapons, adding the stipulation that if a country attacks Russian territory that is backed by a military alliance, then you can use nuclear weapons. But I also think that President Putin is not a fanatic like the West are, the Western leaders, and will not do that. You see, I think these Zionists that are in control of Western states want Russia to be the first to use a nuclear weapon, because they want to use nuclear weapons on the Palestinian people, on the Lebanese people, on Iran, and they just want an excuse. They don't want to be the first ones to do it. And I know Russia has the military capabilities to crush Ukraine hard without the use of nuclear weapons, and they have been holding back since the beginning of this war on full-scale destruction of the Ukrainian state. So while the West wishes and hopes that actually President Putin uses his nuclear weapons first, he's not going to do that. So let's look at how this is going to play out here. If the Americans allow Ukraine to bomb the territory of Russia with their weapons, what do you think Russia will do to American presence in the region here in terms of whatever limitations it had on the use of its weapons to attack American interests in the region by members of the Axis of Resistance? I think we're going to see an acceleration of transfer of weapons and technology to the Axis of Resistance from Russia.
I think that's I agree with you. That's a position I've been making, because the Russians initially said that's something that we can do. You know what I mean? If two can play at that game. So we know good and well that if the Russians give, say, Onyx anti-ship, my understanding, and Iran released some video, is that Ansar Allah was able to strike a U.S. carrier. I know that I think it's the USS Abraham Lincoln they announced was heading back to San Diego. Yeah, limping back to San Diego because I think it got hit. But that's with the drones and things that they have. I think the Russians give them those Onyx missiles and nasty, supersonic missiles, things of that nature, maybe some air defense. I think the Russian response, and the easiest, and probably, if we're honest about it, the most effective response they could do, right, would be to heavily arm, especially Ansar Allah, because as soon as you give it to them, they're going to fire everything they got at the Americans and celebrate, right? They'll be dancing in the streets before they even fire it. So I think that's what you're looking at. I think Ansar Allah is going to get some nasty stuff. Iran already has stuff. And also, don't you think it could extend to Iran as part of the worldwide axis of resistance, that Iran could basically, some gloves could be taken off and they could say, okay, here, we're going to up the ante here. Particularly add this at a time when Israel's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. As the U.S. and Israel get weaker in the region, the harder you hit them in that, and that's where they're weakest. So, and that's where they're right out in the open. The easiest place to hit the U.S. right now is where they're fighting in the Middle East. And I think that's what we're looking at.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And so we're already in World War. It's not announced by the players, but there is two major battlefields going on, which is the Levant area and the Ukraine. And this has been ongoing, even the Levant battle, since the beginning of the war of Syria. Okay, and the Americans have lost on every battlefield since then. What we see is American desperation as they lose control as an empire, and as they, the whole world sees them unable to win any battle since the beginning of the war in Syria, the maximum extension of the American imperial domains with the capture of also Ukraine. That's the height of the American empire, taking half of Syria and taking all of Ukraine. And since then, they've been retreating. So Russia has won back all that territory. Hezbollah has won back all of the north of Palestine. It's empty, the north of Palestine. Hamas has, although it's destroyed Gaza and all of that genocide, in reality, Hamas still has liberated all the area around Gaza of Zionist colonists that are to yet have not returned to their colonies. Okay, so we are seeing, again, but all of these descriptions are never said in mainstream media. Okay, or even mainstream analysts that are on all of those sides avoid describing things in these ways. Because once you describe them in these ways, it's clear that we're in the midst of a world war already. It's just the players don't want to announce it. But what will make it impossible to deny that it is a world war is either a direct confrontation with Iran that inflames the whole West Asia and North Africa, or a direct war with Russia, which will lead us to a nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, and one thing is obvious now to the world. The U.S. in '91, when Russia folded, the U.S., they dropped the smart bombs and they showed videos and they said, look at us, we're the most powerful military in the world, blah, blah, blah. One thing is obvious to the world now, and that is the U.S. empire, the imperial military. The only thing they can do is maybe a country like Afghanistan that doesn't have, air defense and high technology and support from U.S. adversaries. The U.S. can pound them for a long time, but they're still going to lose. But if they fight an adversary, not even a peer adversary, an adversary that's well armed and that's highly motivated, they will lose. They can't beat anybody. They put everything they have, all of their allies and everything against the Russians. That's lost. It's over. That's lost. Israel, the crown jewel of the empire in the region that is the most important. If there's any place in the world they want, it's the oil. They're getting crushed. They have no chance of winning. So the world is looking at the US empire saying, you're just a fraud. You can only bomb people who don't have anything way to protect themselves. If you fight anybody, you lose. So to some extent, the empire's dead. You know what I mean? The only thing it can do is swallow a suicide pill, a nuclear suicide pill. The empire is dead. It is now exposed. They can't fight anyone who can fight back.
Oh yes, oh yes. And look, 2 days ago, the special advisor to the Ayatollah, Mr. Al-Arjani, came here to Beirut, and then he went back to Iran, and there was a lot of interviews made with him when he was in Iran. And one of the interviews, he said, Iran has already the ability to produce a nuclear weapon within 24 hours. And we have the authority to do it if we're attacked by a nuclear weapon. And let's say the Israelis do a first strike on Iran. Okay, the main military nuclear reactor is under one of the biggest mountains in Iran, and it would take 20 warheads at least to penetrate it, 20 nuclear warheads. Okay, so it's not something easy, and Iran has many of these locations around the country. And the Israelis have, according to the estimates of the American intelligence, around 300 nuclear warheads. Let's say they bomb every Arab capital at the same time, the Zionists, and kill a couple of, there's 500 million Arabs. Okay, there's only now, I think, around 5 million Zionists left inside Palestine. 2 million of them probably already left to the west. 2 nuclear warheads, there will be no more Israel. Even if they fired all their 300 warheads on the Arabic and Muslim world. We're 500 million Arabs, almost 1.5 billion, if not 2 billion Muslims. What's a sacrifice of a few million Arabs to end this goddamn Zionist colony and end 600 years of Western European domination of humanity? But that's a good sacrifice. There's no coming back from where they put themselves, the Zionists.
Yeah, at this point, and a lot of people don't believe this. I believe that the game that the U.S. Let's talk about this for a bit, because this is a discussion that you've heard it all the time. The Israelis control the U.S. The Israeli government, Israel is an independent country that controls the U.S. I don't believe that. I believe that Israel is a fraud, that really it's the government of the United States. And Israel is something that's being used by the government of the US to pretend that it's not the US empire in the Middle East, that it's really a country there and they have to assist and control that country. No, it's not. That is a US military outpost, a US military base, in my concern, that is masquerading as a country.
Oh yes, I mean, there's the very famous saying by Biden when his brain was not vegetable yet, when he said that if Israel didn't exist, we would have had to create it.
Exactly.
And of course, Napoleon had the same idea when he occupied Palestine and Egypt. He wanted to create a Jewish state there where he can move all the Europeans, Jews, to be at war, in his own words, in constant war with the rest of the region, so that the power and money and resources of the region that is very rich are diverted into an endless war, and the Arabs would never rise to be a competitor to the Europeans. That's the whole point. And the Zionist elite, when they founded Israel, or when they were trying to sell the idea to European leaders, first to the German empire and then to the Brits, They openly said that this is what we will do. We will be there for you as a bulwark against the Arab hordes. We will be the fortress of the European civilization. And what we heard Netanyahu say in the Congress, saying that this war is on behalf of all of the West. We are the defenders
Yep.
of the Western civilization. He is not lying there, because but this is what Western civilization or the empire ruled from DC wants, and he's providing the service. And already the Zionists are defeated militarily on the ground. They're also hated by the whole planet. The vast majority of American citizens don't want this. The vast majority of Western citizens don't want this. And so the Western elite, if they actually didn't want the Zionist colony to exist, it wouldn't exist in a minute. Okay, and I think from this pulpit, I can offer this: the Zionist, the Western, civilization, quote unquote, that doesn't want all those immigrant Arab and Muslims, will take them all in Palestine. If you take your Zionist colonist instead, let's have an exchange. You don't want Arabs and Muslims in the West. We want them all here. We want all the knowledge and specialization that these amazing diasporas have to come back, and they can take their European civilization guys here.
But let me add this. This is important. They don't want them. Where on earth was the place that hated the Jews the most? Where were the pogroms? Where was the Europeans were the ones that hated the Jews the most. They're the ones that put them in concentration camps and wiped them out. They're the ones for 1,000 years. If they didn't have good rain in their area, they'd go to the Jewish community and say, well, it's the fault of them. And they do a pogrom and kill them all. Right, all through the so-called Dark Ages, right? So the people who were the most oppressive and brutal towards the Jewish people. Meanwhile, Jews were living in the Middle East in peace with the Muslims, right? But the people who hated the Jews the most, who slaughtered them and murdered them for centuries, who ultimately the Holocaust was just like the crescendo of anti-Semitism in a place that had been practicing brutal anti-Semitism for 1,000 years. And then what is their plan to look out for the Jews? Get the hell out of here. Hey, I got an idea, Jews. We'll make a land over there and we'll put you all out and you'll be safe there. When I look at it, the most anti-Semitic people on earth, their plan was to run all the Jews out of Europe and to find someplace else there to create an environment there that would be very dangerous for them, where they didn't have to kill them here, where they could put them over there and sacrifice them at the altar of Western imperialism. Anything you look at about the creation of Israel says, let me add one more thing. And what is their argument? Jews, you're not safe here. You're not safe in France and the United States and places like that. You need a place where you'll be safe, and that's over there. They're screaming at the top of their lungs that they don't like Jewish people and they don't want them in their land. So they got to have, and they're not even safe in their land because we'll kill them. So we got to make a place where they're safe over there. If you're a Jewish person, to me, you got to look at that and say, these people are not my friends. And here's the evidence. How's it working out for you?
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean, this is the craziest part, and of course, everything about the Zionist colony, its philosophy, its actions, are so detached from reality and always the opposite. And everything they say is nefarious and the opposite of its meaning. And it's become accustomed right now. Humanity, whenever they hear the word human rights, they're like, oh shit, a genocide is coming. When they're like, America is here to defend your human rights, it means there's going to be a genocide. Be prepared for it. Democracy means enslavement. It's amazing. It's amazing. But we are coming to the end of it. And it is getting to the most violent possibilities. Unfortunately, I think the axis of resistance held for a year the hope that the West will, under the pressure of the news and everybody seeing the truth and the pressure of their own populations and their failures in this propaganda war, that maybe they'll step down from the tree, and they will find a peaceful solution. But as we saw, the response to the patience of the axis of resistance was the assassination of Haniyeh, Nasrallah, and Sinwar, and the terrorist pager attack, and all of these crazy things. And as we see now, being driven towards nuclear war. So whatever patience the axis of resistance had is gone now. And whatever idea that there could be a retreat by the US that is peaceful is gone from the mind of anybody, especially with the election of Trump and all of those new names that he announced that are all Armageddonist, not even Zionist, and of what we just saw in the last 24 hours in Ukraine and what we're seeing here. We're moving to a war that the whole planet will be touched by, and people in the US that want to safeguard their democracy and their state need to prepare themselves for whatever is coming. It's not going to be nice for anybody anywhere on this planet.
Let me ask you this. One of the things that I've seen, there is some talk of, although it would be difficult, there is some talk of at least an element in Israel that wants out, that's looking for, kind of starting to recognize, holy crap, we're in deep we're in deeper than we can handle. If you read, there's an element that's saying, that recognizes we are in deep trouble. Israel can't even fight. How much longer? Taking this, the kind of losses that they're taking. I've always felt like this. The way Ukraine and Israel both most likely fall, or this is a possibility, I just felt most likely, but who knows, is internally. That Ukraine, I just saw an article where the majority of Ukrainians want to end this thing with diplomacy, right? I think that inside of Israel, there's a growing element that's saying we can't take it anymore. Our lives are hell. Go anyway. I think Israel also and Ukraine both are on the verge of an internal collapse. Maybe, dare I say, they could have a civil war.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's good that you brought up that survey of the Ukrainian population, which shows, at least half of them want an end of this war, a negotiated end with Russia, because there was a survey also done in the Zionist colony yesterday. The results came out, and which said, just a little bit over half of the population wants an end of the war with Lebanon, not the genocide in Gaza. So whatever euphoria Netanyahu was capable of getting within the Zionist population with the assassinations in Lebanon and the pager terrorist attack is gone now, especially with the missiles now hitting Tel Aviv and its suburb every day, and practically Haifa almost emptied of Zionist colonists, the second largest city. So that's true. But then you look at what the West is going to do, because they don't really, as we were talking just before, they don't care about the lives of Jews. In fact, they hate them. So will they care about the will of the Israelis? No. Have there ever been any Jewish person that carried arms against the Zionists in 100 years since the beginning of the Zionist project? No, zero. In the midst of the Nazi regime in Germany, 70,000 Germans carried arms against the Nazis, not Jewish Germans, Christian and secular Germans. 70,000 of them died as martyrs. In the midst of slavery in the US, you had John Brown, uh, as a white person, carrying arm against the state to end slavery. But 100 years of Zionism, not one Jew across the whole planet carried arms against the Zionists. So I don't think there's possibility there. In Ukraine, that's a different story, because Ukraine is a country that has a history of carrying arms against the fascists and sacrificing for that. And Ukraine paid a huge price under Nazi occupation, and people still resisted. And so there is hope in Ukraine that something of an armed struggle against the fascist rises within the population. Look at what's happening in right now in also in the Zionist colony. The German government has announced that it's offering fast track citizenship to 40,000 Syrian, Iraqi, Afghani, other refugees in Germany if they serve in the Israeli military, and that they are already serving in the Israeli military right now. So we're having now they're probably going to do the same thing to the Nazis in Ukraine. Say, hey, you want a citizenship in Germany? Go and serve in the Zionist colony. Okay. And so we don't know what the other NATO countries are doing. They probably have similar programs, in France, in the UK, in Canada, in the US, offering citizenship to Nazis and Wahhabis around the world if they go and fight on behalf of the Zionist colony. So now I'm starting to think when the Israelis, when we see a Markava tank blowing up, and we know that there's at least 4 dead inside it, and the Israelis announcing 1 dead, maybe it's because there's 3 mercenaries that nobody will care about whose name is and what happened to them. If our viewers remember, a few months ago, before Sinwar was killed, there was an ambush inside a tunnel in Gaza, and the resistance caught one of the quote-unquote Israeli soldiers, and then they pulled him out. He was not an Israeli, and they couldn't find his ID on him, so he's a mercenary. So this is happening already.
I also believe this. I also believe that and I think this too, that the Russians, I've read now the Russians said that they are working with the Central African Republic, that they're Niger, blah blah blah. I think that a lot of African entities are being heavily armed, so that in the event that things get out of control, they escalate to a full regional war. I've said this all along, I believe this, in the Middle East, that first of all the US bases will be crushed, destroyed, wiped out, incinerated. But I think there's a move to do the same thing in Africa. That I think there's a recognition that if it gets to that point, the US bases have to be ejected from the region and from Africa, that they will be blown up and destroyed in Africa, that the US in the Middle East and Africa their presence will be ended if it spreads, things spread. What do you think about that?
Yes, this is for sure. It's already, we can see the battle playing out inside Central Africa region, in the Sahel region. Ukrainians arming the Wahhabi death squads, Boko Haram and Al Qaeda in the Sahel area, multiple attacks on the militaries of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, as well as the Russian contractors that are there from Wagner, that are in the region. There was, even just a few days ago, an attack on Wagner Russian officers, and multiple dead there. So this is ongoing, and the Ukrainians are openly saying that they're involved in this, and the Russians are fighting this war. Obviously, the Ukrainians don't do anything if their masters in DC didn't tell them to do it. And what weapons do they have that they can export when they're barely, have enough for themselves that they're begging the whole West for? So it's really just a cover for the activities of the CIA and others. Similarly, in Burkina Faso, there was, I think, up until now, 12 assassination attempts on the president, the young president. So this is, the fight in the Sahel region, although it doesn't have a lot of coverage, is one of the main battle zones. Similarly, even in Sudan and Somalia, people don't talk about those wars and the genocide in the Congo and the genocide in Sudan. Those are actually frontline wars that the Russians, the Chinese, the US, the Emiratis, the Iranians, everybody's involved in. Everybody. Everybody's involved in what's happening in Sudan, and everybody's involved in what's happening in Somalia, and everybody's involved in what's happening in the Congo. And if you put it on a map, you see the straight line from the Middle East to Sudan, to the Congo, to the Sahel region. And this is kind of the ridge line that the US was trying to build as a line of fire that separates the Arabic world from sub-Saharan Africa. And divides, the whole continent. This was the plan of the U.S., and they practically had achieved that. But now, with the creation of the Sahel Independent, Confederation there, and the entry of different players into the battle in Sudan and Somalia, their hold on that whole belt is now threatened, and they are retreating. And they're fighting now to take back.
Yeah, and the last I'll say is this. And interestingly enough, the ruling elite here in the West is at war with their own. They're at war with everybody. They're at war with their own people. The American people, I think, have made it clear that they're sick of these endless wars. And a big part of it is it's bleeding our economy. Our economy's crap. I don't care what they say. People here, 50% of Americans don't have $400. 50%, this so-called rich country, don't have $400 for an emergency in a country where things are extremely expensive, and $400 won't get you very far, right? Things are so expensive. And I think the people are like, we are tired of endless war. We want it, right? And the government now has to ban people on social media, try to get rid of TikTok, try to arrest people who are landing in airports coming from other countries where they were doing anti-war work. The other part of it is this. The US and Germany and the UK are falling apart internally. And more and more, the governments are literally at war with their own people who do not want what their government is serving up. This is the last comment I have for you.
Oh, yes. I mean, look at what the German police are doing to German citizens. Yesterday, the head of the Berlin police made a statement saying that LGBTQ and Jews in Germany should watch out when entering Arab neighborhoods or Muslim neighborhoods in Berlin. I mean, this is racial, instigation of unrest, while they are beating to pulp the German citizens that are saying anything against the Zionist colony, and asking people to pledge allegiance to the Zionist colony before they pledge allegiance to Germany as citizens. It's crazy. And look at what happened in Paris and Amsterdam. Yesterday, by the way, also the mayor of Amsterdam apologized, finally, saying, well, no, she made a mistake calling it a pogrom, and that, the Israelis played us. She used those words on national television, the mayor of Amsterdam. Yes, she said they overplayed us, and Netanyahu made those statements using the word pogrom before we even got to investigate, and we got swept by it. She had no choice, basically, but to use the propaganda cues that Netanyahu gave her. So things are not stable in the West, and I think the more the killing field is expanded in this region, the more directly involved the Western militaries are, the more unstable the streets of the West will be, and maybe this will be better. If people want to save their countries in the West before we are all in a nuclear holocaust, it's time for the people to move now.
I think you're right. Well, Laith Maroof, once again, tell everybody about your website, what they need to do, how they can follow you on all your social media endeavors and all that stuff.
You can follow us on freepalestine.video. That's our website. You can donate. Please, we need donations to continue our work. We're demonetized on all platforms. We are on YouTube. We're on X at TV Free Palestine. And follow us on, you can find all the links on our website and on our Twitter page, or to the link tree. We're on at least 12 different platforms to make sure that we are there somewhere as all of these social media platforms become more controlled.
There you go. Freepalestine.video. That's the website. Go there. Look around while you're there. Don't just go there and donate. Yes, we want you to donate, but look around. Go there regularly. Mark that as one of your regular websites. If you find, for instance, not just the website, if you find like a good video or something on there that you find particularly interesting, share the stuff that's on freepalestine.video on your social media platform so people can see the work that they're doing. Be part of that community. Laith Maroof, thanks a lot. Look forward to talking to you again soon. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. And it's critical, you know, as people know, I'm not on X. There's some things going on with that right now, but I'm not on X. And so I need you. We've got 913 viewers now. What that means is, number one, we should have 913 likes. Everybody should be subscribed. And there should be 913 posts minimal on X and all the other platforms that you're on where people share this particular video. So a lot of people out there can see it and figure out what's going on. And at least, whether they agree with it or not, they can make a determination for themselves based on what I consider a discussion by ordinary people. You know, let me add this, Laith. I don't know if you've been paying attention to this. Like CNN and MSNBC, man, they are just dying. People are just leaving the mainstream media. There was a poll that had like only 8% of the people in the United States felt, you know, a strong belief that they were getting reality. Paraphrasing from the media. And now after the election, I mean, they're just disappearing. And I think it's this: we're regular people. Like, we don't have some highfalutin, some, ruling elite view of things. We just kind of look at what's going on. We're scared just like everybody else. We're angry. We have the same emotions as the people that are watching. And we're trying to, and sometimes we'll say things in the chat and they'll say, I don't agree with that. And we're like, well, good. That's what the chat's for. You can watch this and you can argue about it in the chat. You can't do that on CNN or MSNBC. I think the mainstream media is dying. And I think that alternative media and alternative options like this and freepalestine.video are growing, and they're doing everything they can to try to hold us down. But I don't think it can work.
You are definitely right. For the first time, the public square is back to prominence, this social media, with the concentration of mainstream media over the decades. It made it impossible for the people to hear themselves and to argue in the public square, basically. And now with social media, the public square is back, and this is why they're going crazy, and they want to destroy all social media, nationalize it, make it into an arm of propaganda, and that is not going to happen. The internet is out of the box, basically. Jack is, you can't put it back in, and there will be only more and more social media platforms that will continue to represent the people, and there's nothing they can do to control speech anymore.
Well, thanks a lot. And one last thing, Laith is always on a lot of other places. Sometime I'll see him on Activist Network. I think Dialogue Works. What are the ones that you're regularly on, Laith, so people know where to find you?
Yeah, I'm on Activist News Network. On the Canada Files, and there we speak a little bit more about Canadian issues in
Mhm.
relation to all of this. And I'm on Dialogue Works, as you said, and of course, I'm less regular on Danny Haifong
Mhm.
and the Syria analysis. And I'm now more regular on Press TV if people catch that, and RT.
That's wonderful. I really believe that the work that we do here, um, it really helps people to see, because a lot of people haven't seen you. It helps people to see you, maybe even help some of these networks to say, hey, here's a guy. So I think, man, the little stuff that we do, you just never know how it's going to reverberate out there, right? The flap of a butterfly's wings here affect something all the way across the planet. Thanks a lot, Leif Farouk. Everybody, don't forget, share this on all your social. Look, I'm wagging my finger like Barack Obama at black men who wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris. Share this on all your social media platforms. We're out.